Shalom Lakulam. Being today is the 7th anniversary of the death of my dear friend, the voice of Israel, the Great Arik Einstein. I thought that I would take the time to tell a very special, intimate story about Arik. When we first started working with Arik, obviously we traveled around a lot together to the Ofaot, and Arik for some reason liked to sit by me whenever we traveled in the same vehicle, and he would like to sit by me and he would talk to me, and he spoke very, very good English, but he used to try to make me speak in Hebrew because he found when I tried to speak Hebrew with my British accent, he found it quite comical, and he used to laugh at my accent. And he had a nickname for me, and he used to call me Guitarist Inglese. Anyway, one time we were booked to appear with Arik for the troops that were stationed down in the Sinai Desert. And so we were driven to the airport there, the airport of the army, and we walked towards a plane that we were going to fly down on. We found out this plane was actually a paratrooper plane, which parachutists would jump off of, and there was a ramp that went up into the back of the plane, and we climbed up this ramp, and there were rows of seats each side of the aircraft, and we all took our seats, and as usual, Arik sat down by me and was talking to me, and he made a bit of a joke, nervously saying, I hope they don't want us to put parachutes on and jump off the plane down into the Sinai Desert. Of course, we had a good laugh about that, but we basically were scared to death. And they loaded all the equipment onto the plane, all the amplifiers and the guitars and everything else, and all the rest of the people that were coming down for the show climbed aboard the plane. One of the most famous of them being Yaffa Yarkoni, of course, who was a huge star, and I think they called her the voice of the army or something like that. But she was very famous with the troops. So we sat there and we waited for quite a while until the pilot cranked up the engines to the plane, and Arik and I were sitting pretty much where the propeller engines were located. And when it started up, the noise was absolutely deafening. I mean, this was not some luxurious 747 or aircraft like that. This was a basic military plane that parachutists jumped off. And the sound was deafening. And, you know, we played in a rock band, and we were used to hearing the sound from the amplifiers behind, but this sound of the engines was deafening. And Arik looked at me and he said, are you scared? I said, well, kind of. He said, I'm scared to death. So anyway, they revved the engines louder and louder and louder, and then the pilot released the brakes and the plane shot off like that, and we were absolutely scared to death. And anyway, after a while, we kind of got used to we kind of got used to the sound of the aeroplane, and we talked a little, and eventually the plane landed at the army camp down in the Sinai Desert. And when we got there, Arik was greeted by the commander there, together with all the band, and we were made very welcome. And they said, go and get something to eat in the officers' tents, because it was only everybody lived in tents down there. It was really Spartan conditions. So we went in and we saw all this food on the table, and we thought, good, we'll sit down and have something to eat. And we sat down and started eating, and there was sand. All the food that you ate, when you ate it, it was like crunching. You were eating sand that was in the food. And we thought, oh God, well, what is this, And there were a couple of bottles of black and white whiskey on the table, which was Arik's favorite whiskey. He always used to take a bottle of that to the shows, but this was provided for us, so this was very good. And then we went to test out the equipment, and when we went to test out the equipment, we got a bit of a surprise. And the surprise was that they had generators to power the electricity down there, and these generators did not power enough electricity to make the amplifiers work properly. So everything was totally distorted. The amps were totally distorted. The mics were distorted when you sang it. It was pretty terrible. But anyway, we did the show down there, and the troops really, really enjoyed it, even though the sound was distorting. And we finished up the show, and it was late at night, and it was time to go to sleep because we were spending the night down there. And we all went to this tent where we were supposed to sleep, and we got into these like bunk beds, and all you had was like a itchy blanket over you and everything. And I laid there for quite a while, and I said, God, I can't take this up. I'm just going to go outside. And I went outside of the tent, and I stood there and I looked up into the sky to see the most magnificent, beautiful sight that I think I've ever seen in my life, which was the Milky Way. Billions upon billions of stars going right across the sky. And I was looking at that and enjoying that sight when I heard a rustle behind me. And I looked around, and there was Arik. And Arik said, Ata lo yachol lashen, Habibi? And I said, Lo, ani lo yachol lashen. He said to me, come on, let's take a walk. And from behind his back, he pulled out a bottle of the black and white whiskey. And he said, I was able to take this from the table. He said, I thought that we might need it a little later on. And so anyway, we walked away from where the tents were, and Arik and I sat down together on a rock that we found, and he gave me the bottle, and we passed it back and forth and drank quite a bit of this whiskey. And Arik looked up to the sky and he said, you see that beautiful sky? I said, yeah. I said, what a sight. Billions of stars, this is wonderful. And he looked at me and he said, Habibi, now you know what it was like when Moses was walking through the desert and in the dark of night. it was exactly like we're seeing it now. And we started talking, and I told Arik that, how we had found it necessary in the Churchills to leave the country and go and tour in Denmark, which we did. And Arik said to me, I don't like the idea of playing anywhere except for Israel. He said, I've done it, I've tried it, I don't like it. He said, I'll never ever perform outside of Israel again. I believe he may have performed in New York, I think so. Maybe it was the time with the high windows with Shmulik Kraus and Josie Katz, but I'm not sure. But no, he said he would never perform outside of Israel again, and I believe he never did, as far as I know. And then we started talking a little bit more, and he said to me, I'm very, very scared about every time I go on stage. He said, I start to shake. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yes. He said, I'm a very, very shy person, and I'm very, very scared when I go to perform, and I always have been. And I was quite surprised, and then something occurred to me, which I had noticed, and didn't think anything of until this moment. I noticed that whenever we performed with Arik, he was always nervously touching his head, and when he was holding the microphone, his hands were always shaking like that. And I just thought, well, that's the way he was. But apparently that was showed that how afraid he was to perform. And but he was a great performer, and he was a great singer. He didn't really talk to the audience that much. When we used to play our shows with him, he usually used to sing for half an hour, and he would just go. He wouldn't introduce the songs. He would just go from one song into the next, and we'd play all the songs, and in the end he would just say Toda Rabba, and he would leave the stage. So he never really talked to the audience that much. But that really for me was a wonderful experience, to sit with the great icon, Mr. Arik Einstein, in the middle of the Sinai Desert at probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and talk about what we talked about, and for me to find out those personal things about Arik. And needless to say, the flight back was also terrible on the plane. Arik was very, very uncomfortable. He told me he was petrified, and I wasn't so much scared, but I had a problem with the pressure in my head. It was awful. So we were very glad to get back to Tel Aviv. But one thing which really did occur to me was I felt great compassion for the troops, all those young men that were in the Israeli army that had to live in those conditions down in the desert, eating food with sand in it, sleeping in tents, and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that they served their country in such a way. And it was, after all, a great honor, I felt, for me to go fly down with everybody to Sinai and play music for the troops, which I know they really appreciated it. So that's a little story that you probably didn't know about the great Arik Einstein. And on this day, I will remember him, as I know this was the day we lost our great icon and the voice of Israel, the great Arik Einstein. So rest in peace, Arik. I love you, Habibi. I always will. And rest in peace forever. Toda rabba לכולם ולילה טוב.